Families trust schools to keep their children safe during the day. And thanks to the efforts of millions of teachers, principals, and school staff across America, the majority of our schools remain safe havens for our nation's youth. The unfortunate reality is, however, that school districts in this country may be touched either directly or indirectly by a crisis of some kind at any given time. Natural disasters such as floods, earthquakes, fires, tornadoes, they can strike a community with little or no warning. School shootings, whether they're threatened or actual, are extremely rare, but they are horrific and chilling when they occur. The events of September 11th and subsequent scares have ushered in a new age of fear across our communities and school districts. Children rely on and they find great comfort in the adults who protect them. Thus, it is important that teachers and staff of schools must know how to help their students through a crisis and be able to return them home safely to their parents. Knowing what to do when faced with a crisis can be the difference between calm and chaos, between courage and fear, between life and death. There are thousands of fires that may occur in schools every year, but yet there is usually minimal damage to life and property because staff and students are prepared. They spend plenty of drills and exercise times in fire protection. This preparedness needs to be extended to all risks that schools face. We as schools and school districts need to be ready to handle any crisis that occurs, large and small, to keep our children safe and out of harm's way. A crisis plan needs to have the processes for many different events and hazards, those that are caused by both nature and by people. Examples of natural disasters of earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, other severe weather issues, fires, chemical or hazardous material spills, bus crashes, school shootings, bomb threats, medical emergencies, student or staff deaths, whether it be unintentional or natural or suicide or other, and outbreaks of disease or other infections. These are the facets that need to be planned in your crisis plan. Crisis management involves four main cycles. The first one being mitigation and prevention. This is where you address what the schools and the school districts can do to reduce or eliminate the risk to life and property. Second phase is preparedness. This is where the school district focuses on the process of the planning for the worst case scenarios. The response is devoted to the steps that the school district takes during a crisis. And the last phase is recovery, and that is learning how to deal with and how to restore the learning and teaching environments after a crisis. Crisis management is a continual process. That's as you see the arrows, it continues and cycles through. The plans need to be reviewed and revised regularly because good plans are never finished. They can always be updated based on experiences and other changing situations. When you're developing a crisis plan, the primary people who are going to be involved in this are known as your stakeholders, and these are the people who are concerned about the safety of the school and the people who will be called on for assistance when a crisis may occur. Now, this is going to involve a lot of people that fall into that category. Your school and district administrators, and that would include department heads such as transportation, food service, maintenance, nursing, and others. Certainly the teachers and parents and students from the local schools, community leaders, members of your law enforcement and emergency management agencies, and other local agencies such as your health department, such as your hospital personnel, utility departments like electric, gas, water, and others. A part of the crisis plan also is the development of intergovernmental agreements. These are common methods for neighboring jurisdictions to pool their resources and services. The result of intergovernmental cooperation through these agreements is that there can be significant cost savings, efficiency, and better overall service to the community and coordinated management. A couple of examples here would be with a county government planning to use the school as a disaster shelter location. Could be that county facilities, such as a park or a gymnasium, being used as a relocation site for one of the schools in the district in the event of having to move the students away because of an emergency. It could be the use of school buses for an emergency situation or evacuation situation within the county. The intergovernmental agreements usually are prepared and developed by the legal counsel of the school district and the government entity. Some suggestions that should be included in the agreements is, of course, the statement of who the parties are, the purpose of the agreement, what are the services that are going to be performed by each of the parties, talking about any finance issues, who's going to be the administrative contacts for each of the agreement entities, anything else related to legal issues, liability and insurance, and then also information including the duration of the agreement, when it can be terminated, or any kind of changes or amendments to it. Whenever any crisis occurs, one of the areas that usually comes out as a top concern afterwards is a problem with communication. So it's important that the crisis plan be very, very tuned in terms of communication. One is common terminology. Educators are very big about using abbreviations as well as law enforcement people as well. So it's important that everyone speaks in common terminology so that the others can understand. It is important to identify several modes of communication for internal and external. This means that within the school setting there's appropriate modes of communication as well as external communication with the outside first responders. This could be for walkie-talkies, it could be cell phones, other radio uses. The one area to always keep in consideration are the bus radios. A lot of times these are overlooked, but they can be utilized for various communications in an emergency as well. You want to make sure that there's an adequate supply so that if an emergency occurs, you have additional walkie-talkies either from the school or from the first responders to be able to share with the other groups so that there is good communication. And in some districts, they have communication capabilities where they can talk directly from their walkie-talkies in the school to their first responders. Some don't have that, so you need to make sure a plan is in place of how that kind of communication can be made available. And the district should have a plan in place to immediately notify parents and community in the event of an emergency. Many districts utilize phone notification systems that also includes text and email. If your school does not have this, this is an area that you should look into, and the cost is usually minimal per student. Another important piece of the communication is District Public Information Officer. A representative of the school district should be assigned to be the specific contact with the media. And if you don't have someone that is in this place or someone who doesn't feel comfortable with it, there are courses available that can be taken. I know there is one that is offered through the Georgia Public Service Training Center in Georgia, and you can obtain information usually from the Georgia Emergency Management Agency, GEMA, in terms of those classes that would assist in that area. Emergency preparedness involves two primary areas. One is the development of emergency operations plans, and that's what we're going to share with you now. The Emergency Operation Plan is kind of the handbook that gives you and the employees of the district the information they need of how and what to do in the event of various emergencies. This is a plan that should be reviewed annually and revised annually. And in beginning the process of the development of the plan, it is important to first evaluate the district's needs and evaluate the school's needs. In other words, you may have a school that is located to active railroad tracks. You may have another school that's fairly close to a chemical plant. These schools have individual needs that need to be addressed and evaluated in the operation plans for them. You also then would assess the safety and security of the schools and look at those individual needs and make sure that those individual needs are addressed specifically. And then the process involves the development of multi-hazard emergency responses. This would include making all of the coordination plans with all the first responders in your community, and then having all the specifics on natural and man-made incidents, examples of the tornadoes, hurricanes, fires, flood, bomb threats, threats of violence, school relocations, all of that put together. And then the final piece of the emergency operation plan is the implementation procedures, making sure that all of the employees know the procedures and process, and then having the opportunity to have practice of drills, of which we will talk about a little bit further. The other piece of the emergency preparedness is the Continuity of Operations Plan, also known as a COOP. A COOP is a program that ensures continued performance of the essential functions across a full range of potential emergencies, whether they're natural or man-made. The one question to ask by the school district is this: if one or more of our facilities and or functions becomes unusable, do we have a complete plan in place to continue our operations? An example being a school that is damaged by fire, a tornado, or explosion, and the school is no longer usable. Do you have in place a plan to continue on with the normal operation of your school district? Another example, if one of those tragic events occurred at your district level office, do you have an operations plan to be able to continue the operation of your school district even though your district office is no longer usable? A COOP provides guidance and establishes responsibilities and procedures. And just remembering that the COOP is not the same as the Emergency Operations Plan, but it rather supplements it in the event of a normal facility or human resources not being available. Once you put all of this together, it is important that there is an implementation procedure, that all of the students and staff understand what they should do in the event of these emergencies. You have training for your staff, you have training for your students so that they understand what to do, so that if a real event occurs, it's not the first time that those students or staff have participated in it. Examples being of fire drills, severe weather drills, bomb threats, lockdowns. These are just some of the examples. And it should be pointed out that in the state of Georgia, there are certain requirements for a certain number of drills, primarily for fire and severe weather. But on some of the others, it's left up to the local school district. So local school districts should be sure and include that into their local crisis emergency management plan.